Hello and welcome to the Family Business. I'm Joe Castiglione Jr. Have my co-host Isaac Stoops in the house today. The man who needs no introduction, Brian Bosworth. Brian, thanks for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, guys. Congratulations on the show. Happy to be on with you guys.
Thanks for taking the time. We're really appreciative. Usually the first thing we kind of ask is, i.e. the name, the Family Business. You've been around the program. You are family to the program. You're kind of coincide with OU. And so, what kind of makes, since you've stepped away from Oklahoma in the playing days, what makes Oklahoma a family-type atmosphere?
Well, of course, winning creates the atmosphere, the culture in which success happens. And when you're successful, people become closer. The expectation from coaches to players, to other players, the senior players, onto the younger players, the freshmen that are coming in, creating that culture, that atmosphere where, everybody is counted on. There is no weak link as long as everybody's giving effort. And as long as that effort is being seen with a great attitude and a buy all in kind of approach, then the family just kind of grows. But it really starts from the success, and the success really bleeds down from the head man. And if the head man believes and is a great motivator and has great intensity and great knowledge of not only the game, but of the personal relationships of the players, it just creates, that kind of fertilizer in which the family dynamic can grow, because everybody wants to they want to impress everybody, but they don't want to let anybody down. So I think that's the biggest part of having family, is not to disappoint. And in order not to disappoint, everybody's got to have that. I'm all in. I'm buying what you're selling, and I'll go to the links that it takes to prove that you can count on me. So I think we've had that for decades. There's been some times where it didn't exist, like in the 90s, we struggled a little bit, but in the 70s, Coach Switzer, dominated college football, but it was the way in which he recruited. And he took that same style through the 80s. And then Coach Stoops took over and reestablished kind of what Barry was doing, and with great players came great success and great, games, and, the ability to, win championships year after year. And, everybody wants to be part of that. So when you're looking at Oklahoma as a top tier program, there's not many that can, stand toe to toe with Oklahoma and the success they've had decade over decade.
Yeah, obviously winning, cures all. When you have a legendary coach like Coach Switzer, and, all those things that go into picking a school. I was going to ask you what made you choose Oklahoma, but that kind of speaks for itself right there. But did you consider any other schools? And I've heard an interesting story about Coach Switzer and A&M in your lunchroom. You got to tell us that story while you're on today.
Well, I committed to every school I went to. So, I was in the mindset that I had a lot of doubt coming out of high school. My head coach wasn't one of those very motivating kind of guys. He didn't instill a lot of confidence and reinforcement of my ability. My assistant coaches did, but it was the head coach that was really making the phone calls and talking to the recruiting coordinators coming in at the time. But when I went to SMU, I committed to them in the locker room when they won the Southwest Conference Championship, and then went to Baylor, committed to Grant Taft, went to LSU. I didn't commit to LSU because I just couldn't stand that food. I was on Pepto-Bismol for a whole week coming out of that trip. Went to A&M, really had a great time at A&M. Jackie Sherrill was the head coach there. And my recruiter was Jerry Pettibone, and he instilled something that I hadn't really had in my life, a kind of a relationship with God and Jesus and the family that they had built down there. And I really felt like that was the place that felt right. I always wanted to go to Oklahoma, and I actually promised my grandfather that I would go to Oklahoma when I was 10. But my fear was, I looked at the roster and I thought, man, I don't know how I'm going to break that barrier where I can get in there and play some football, because they had some dominant players. And I always looked at the Big Eight as just that tier above the Southwest Conference, even though Texas and SMU and Arkansas and those guys, they were competitive. But, the Big Eight Conference back in those days, they was a physical, dominant, they were always in the, national championship pictures at the end of the year. It was always the Orange Bowl. It was always Nebraska. It was always Oklahoma. Oklahoma State was, always good there. So to me, it just felt like, I wanted to play and I didn't want to sit and watch. So when I committed to A&M, I called the coach there at Oklahoma and said, hey, look, man, I think I've made my decision. I'm going to cancel the trip to Oklahoma. Barry Switzer shows up in my cafeteria 2 days later, and 1,000 kids in my cafeteria lunchroom, and he's screaming in the bars, where is he? Where is he? And he's got all his hardware on, and he's, wearing his mink coat, and, just being, suave bole, Coach Switzer, just a swagger that everybody sees. It's real. But when he's calling you out, it's a little intimidating. It's impressive at the same time, because in fact, the guy knows your name. Especially, coming from a 2-8 football team my senior year. So it wasn't like a lot of success, but he was a guy that saw talent, and the way he talks, the way he motivates, and he talked about family, and he just said, hey, you got to come up here, give us a chance. You want to win a championship, and you're going to get a championship if you come to Oklahoma. It's just a matter of, we want you to want to be here. And then when he brought me into the office after the recruiting trip, he had said, how was your trip? And I just frankly asked him, I said, 2-8, that's what my senior year was. You could have any linebacker in the country, and you're really pressing hard to get me to sign. You've already got a couple of commitments. You've got 2 All-Americans playing right now. Why do you need me? And he just said, I believe you have something that you don't know you have. I can pull it out of you, but you got to trust me. And we want you to be part of our family. And when he said that, that made all the difference in the world to me, because he was the only one that went as far as he did to convince me that my presence in Norman was not only wanted, but it was needed. And I wanted to be part of that atmosphere.
That's such a cool story. I've heard it, but heard it straight from your mouth is like a different level. And for those of us, who weren't even born then, and, we didn't get to watch Coach Switzer coach and see that level of dominance, we hear these stories, we watch the documentaries, but hearing it firsthand, is a different level. What was it like playing for Coach Switzer? I mean, like we said, the swagger, did he really have that as much the level as we hear today? Cause we think of man, he rocked fur coats and,
well, yeah, even now, I mean, he's just a larger than life figure. He's the king. So I wonder what it was like, during his prime. How was that for you guys?
Yeah, he was the most charismatic head coach I think college football has really ever had. I mean, if you can put maybe another 1 or 2 up there, I don't know who they would be that would stand toe to toe with the way Coach Switzer walks it, talks it, believes it, breathes it, bleeds it, all of it. And he does it for his players. He goes out and gets talent. He doesn't care where they're from. He doesn't care their background. He doesn't care, their ethnicity. He doesn't care about any of that stuff. He looks at the person. He's a great, he understands how athletes work. He knows how to push the buttons, and not every athlete has the same button. So you really have to understand psychology, and Coach is just real. He's just real. I mean, he's emotional. I kind of modeled a little bit of, the Boz. I think it might be a little Switzer, because when he's in a press conference, he says whatever the hell he wants to say. He smokes a cigarette if he wants to smoke a cigarette. He'll drink his drink if he wants to drink. He doesn't care because he's winning, and he's winning with the players that other schools wanted, but they couldn't get. And he didn't steal him. He just convinced him that winning a championship means an awful lot. So come to Oklahoma and you're going to get a chance to do that. And he's just a genuine guy. And when you look at what he's done after he's coached, and he's, I guess, in retirement, but I don't think he's ever really retired because he's always working, and he's always working with his players from every year that he coached. He knows all of the players, the mamas, the daddies. He knows the players he didn't get and those mamas and daddies. So his encyclopedia of knowledge in his head at his age is amazing. I mean, if we could transplant Coach Switzer's brain into Biden, man, he'd be amazing. He'd get 100%, but he wouldn't because he can't. Because Coach Switzer is one of a kind, and I don't know anybody that has a bad word to say about him because he is the real deal, the king.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, college football has obviously changed so much from when you played and, during that era. And I mean, the culture, like you said, around Oklahoma, it's remained consistent because we win, and that's, what kind of defines us. But now you have the transfer portal and NIL, and so things are just a lot different now. And, we talk so much about it being a family, and that family can be a little bit harder to build when guys are coming in and also, going out. And, that happens year after year. What are your kind of thoughts on the transfer portal? Do you think, at some point, some guardrails, or what kind of challenges do you think that might bring that you guys didn't have to face when building, obviously your family?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big difference now, the culture. The kids that are coming out of college, they've got the handout, attitude, that mentality of what are you going to get me to, give me to come to your program. During our years, to get a college scholarship offer was such a big deal. I mean, it's everything that you worked for from the time you were in junior high and through high school, and that want to, desire, and passion that you had. You didn't care if you got paid. You just wanted to go to your favorite school. If you got a college scholarship offer from your favorite school, you hit a grand slam. And now these kids, they're not looking at going to their favorite school. They're looking at going to the school that's going to pay them the most or give them the most exposure or cachet, or just it's frankly horseshit. And it's going to ruin the game because a coach can't recruit the players and keep them in the corral because the corral is full of chaos. And if you got too many wild horses, they're going to be kicking each other. And a lot of the guys, they're not in it for the same reasons that the guys that want to be in the program, whatever program that is, are there for. So creating that family, all those things we talked about at the beginning, it makes it increasingly harder and more difficult for the coaches to create a 4-year program by bringing in guys that they want to cultivate and they want to mature through the program and get them involved and bring them through the whole process, making them bigger, stronger, faster, smarter, and buying in. You don't buy in with the first day you get there. You got to see the culture, and the older guys have got to, reach out to the younger guys and bring them along and stir that soup and make it thick. And when you got money involved, especially dark money coming from all over, mamas and daddies taking phone calls and say, wait, you're going to offer my son what if he does this? And he just has to jump into the portal and it's automatic. And it's ruining the essence of what college football is really all about, which is one of the very few sports that is played with so much passion. You could be number one in the country and a team that's not even ranked can come into your house, and because they got that mojo going and they feel good about themselves, they can knock the number one team off in the country. And that's the beauty about college football, when you have a bunch of no names come in and beat a bunch of everyday household names. And it's hard to do that when you got your stars leaving after 1 year because then the school over there is going to pay me more money. Match me and I'll stay. If not, then I'm going to go over here. And so your skill positions like the quarterback, the wide receivers, the linebackers, and DBs, the left tackles, all the centers, all these guys, they have one good year and they still have 3 years left on their college scholarship. They're already looking out the door, out the window, and down the road. They want somebody else. Unless you got some true blue bloods that want to be at Oklahoma for 4 years, which I know we've got some. And the challenge is making them happy and letting them be patient to go along with the process so that their playing time comes when they're ready to go. But you can only be ready to go when you put the work in and you're ready to go when a coach calls your name. But you got to be prepared. So there's a lot of ingredients on both sides, but the players right now have too much leverage and they're not smart enough at the age that they are to understand what they're sacrificing, what the risk is by going in that transfer portal. They may lose something that they didn't know that they had if they just stayed and been patient, because a lot of these guys go in the portal and they don't get picked up, and then that's it, game over. And then what are they going to do there? So they got to put some guardrails on. Maybe go in the portal one time, the second time you got to go in, you got to sit out a year. And then after that, that's it. You only get one opportunity. There's got to be some, I've always thought, instead of doing a 1-year college scholarship offer, make it a 4-year or make it a 3-year. You get a 3-year offer. I'm sorry, you cannot leave. If you leave and you get NIL money to get there, you got to give that NIL money back. So how bad do you really want to leave? So there's ways to kind of get around it, but right now the NCAA is, they're like ostriches. They've stuck their head in the sand and they don't want to know anything what's going on. Which back in the day, they were up everybody's cahoot because they wanted to know everything that was going on. They were opening people's mail.
Speak for yourself. Yeah.
It's completely different. I think those two solutions that you proposed are two of like the more realistic solutions. You can only transfer once, and then after that you have to sit out a year, or having multi-year scholarships to prevent transferring, because I just at that age I can't imagine like the pressure you would feel from people who are making decisions for you that don't have your best interest, i.e. you have these NIL agents, you have agents, you have family members, you have handlers.
Well, sometimes it's even aunts and uncles, or it's a family friend, or it's, and a lot of people have a lot to say about something that's ultimately not going to affect them long term, like it's going to be the person that it's happening to.
And those people don't have any dog in a fight. They're not actually living it day in and day out. They haven't put the work in, and they don't really have anything to risk. Yeah, the player, the athlete, has everything to risk. And if he goes to a school, the coaches love him, and the players love him, and he's in a great environment, and he can get a great education with a great alumni base, and all he has to do is just put the work in. Just put the work in. Because there ain't nothing in life for free, and you're not going to get handed anything. You might get a silver platter for 1 year because everybody thinks, you made one great catch or you made one great run. Oh, we could use him. But then you go there, it's like, there's not one player doesn't make the team. You need 11 guys that love it on the field at one time, all doing the right thing for everybody to look good. Just because you got one guy who can throw the ball and the other guys can't catch it, doesn't mean you're going to get more yards. You have to trust why the coaches came in and offered you the scholarship to begin with. Yeah. If they offered it to you because they loved you, then you should stay there and see how much love you can get out of it.
Yeah, it's like, the grass isn't always greener elsewhere. It's green where you water it. I think that's something that BV has done a really good job of is bringing back that culture and, just establishing such a strong relationship with his players, but also just his message, just being around him for that little bit while I was student coaching. Like, he's a leader of men, and he won't ask you to do anything that he won't do. So yeah, what are your thoughts on the team now on BV, on how he's kind of, brought a little bit of that edge back, especially in the linebacker room, but overall as a defense, I guess we could start where your thoughts are there.
Well, I like what he's doing as we go into the SEC. You have to have a dominant defensive front line, linebacker, and defensive back. And you then have to have depth along with that. Because when you go into the SEC, you're going to be playing 4 full, hard-nosed quarters of football. You can't get it done in a half. There's not going to be any of these runaway games. Everybody's got great talent in the SEC, and every game is going to be a battle all the way into the fourth quarter. And you got to get these guys to understand that your mental toughness has to sustain itself from first quarter to the second quarter, and then gear it back up in the third and fourth quarter, and keep it at that high level. I mean, you've seen Coach Venables in action, and he's a great, soft talker. But, man, when he's in the locker room, he's as intense as they all are. And you got to love that because he's played it. He knows it. He knows that there's got to be, and I'm really on both sides of the ball, maybe a little bit more cerebral on the offensive side so that they know how to execute the plays. But on the defensive side of the ball, what he really is trying to get the guys to do is, one, be intense. You get intensity, attitude, the willingness to sacrifice oneself, regardless of how that blow is going to feel, is the key to being a great defensive player. And if he can get those players, which I know that he's cultivating, he's bringing the kids in. He got that kid from TCU. I like him a lot.
Dominic
Williams.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's going to be a dominant player. We've got a lot of great kids that are coming in that are brand new. But what he does in motivating the players, I've seen it when he was defensive coordinator under Bob Stoops, and he just honed that and made it better when he was at Clemson. And then he's brought that back home to Oklahoma. And what I see in the locker room, because I've been blessed to get into the locker room several times and see him do his work both on the road, before game, during a game, at halftime, and then how he celebrates with the guys or commensurates a loss. He's right there in the thick of it with these guys. So you talk about a coach who's all in for his players. I don't know a coach in college football that is as intense and is as all in as Coach Brent Venables is for Oklahoma and his players.
Speaking of that, Olin, you've kind of developed this interesting relationship, and it's interesting for a lot of reasons because he's a linebacker. There's some similarities with the swagger and stuff. And so Coach BV's got this relationship with Danny Stutsman because he's kind of his workhorse, his leader right now in defense, along with Billy Bowman, of course. And then you also have that relationship with Danny Stutsman, of course, being in his return video last year when he was announcing that he was passing on another year of the draft. So just kind of talk about, your relationship with Danny, as he reached out to you, about being a face of a program and leading a defense and bringing that to a championship level.
Well, I saw Danny come on when he first got there, and, I knew that he had some talent and he worked hard, and that I will give him a lot of credit for the work that he's done. But he came up to me last year before the season started, and he asked, what does it take to be a leader? And I said, it's not so much what you say, it's what you do. If you do it consistently and you do it play after play and you rally the guys and you always have that attitude that we don't quit. That's not what we do. I don't care what the score is. You just never quit. It permeates not only your linebacker core, but it permeates throughout your defense. And then people look at you as the leader. And not only does he hear, but he listens, and he does. And he executes not only his job, but he is a great leader for that defense. He's spiritually there. He's emotionally there. He's physically there on a lot of the plays. He makes the players around him better. And I know Coach Venables loves him. I know he loves the effort that he constantly gives. And kids that see that, the young kids see that, they see his effort. And, you might fail on a play. I mean, that just happens. You're not going to win every single play. But players that watch other players and they always have 100% effort, whether they win the play or they lose the play, there's 100% effort no matter what. That's the kind of leadership that you need to have in order not only to have a successful transfer of what Brent took over from Lincoln, but then to lead it, build it, and create it for that next generation coming. And I think it was valuable for Danny to listen not only to Coach Venables. I had a small, conversation with him about how I thought my personal opinion was he needed one more year of seasoning. That video that we did was actually done to help promote him for the Butkus Award, but he got injured in the Kansas game. I was there for that game, and he couldn't go in the Kansas game second half, and he couldn't go in the Oklahoma State game, and I think that kind of cost him the chance of getting in that conversation. But the kid that won the Butkus Award last year was well deserved. The kid was amazing. I think he came out of South Carolina. But Danny is not that far off from being there, and he needs this one more year, not only the season, and it's a win-win. It's a win for Oklahoma, and it's a win for Danny, because I think another year of seasoned work in the SEC at that next level of competition, and he leads us and creates much success for himself, is only going to translate better for him at that next level in the NFL draft. And I think if he'd have came out this last year, he might have been a 5th, 6th round pick. If he stays and goes and has a great year and does what everybody hopes and prays that he does, he could be a 1st or 2nd round pick. I think that highly of him. He's a smart, cerebral guy with a lot of intelligence and a lot of intensity, and that's exactly what Coach Brent Venables needs, not only as a coach off the field, but a coach, as a player coach, in the locker room, with the players, with the younger guys, to bring those guys in and go, this is what you're expected to do at the University of Oklahoma.
Yeah, I love watching him play, and obviously, Coach Venables' defense is very complex, and it's very fluid.
Yeah.
Like, it changes a lot based on pre-snap things, and I think obviously him and Billy do a great job of making sure we're all in the right places. But before we close here in a second, I gotta ask you. So, like, The Longest Yard is one of my favorite movies. I think it's so funny. And then obviously I've seen your 30 for 30. Everyone has. And then the Pepsi Fansville commercials. I know because you kind of stepped into
Pepsi.
Not Pepsi? Dr. Pepper. See?
Pepper.
I'm glad you caught me. But I know you kind of stepped into that acting role for a little bit. Did you enjoy that? Or, like, how was that experience, for the most part?
It took me some time to realize the career was over, because I knew what I was built for. I was built to play football, and I put everything, heart, soul, everything into it. And the '90s was tough, one physically and emotionally, spiritually. All of it. It was a really tough decade for me, because I just felt like a lot of things. I got abandoned. I got left behind. I got whatever, happened. I was fortunate that I had a guy that, was my agent, that wanted to do, have an athlete that was played football, and he translated into the movies. He told me that when we were talking before, I signed with him. And I said, frankly, I don't have any desire to be an actor. You can do whatever you want to, off the field. But I plan on playing as long as I can. And, somewhere down the road, if there's a desire there and it works out, great. And I didn't realize that desire was going to have to be put in my face as quickly as it did, because year 3, I'm out, and I'm just going, now what do I do with my life? Thank God he planted that seed. It was intimidating, because I'm not a trained actor. I don't know. I didn't have any idea what the hell I was doing. And, he throws me in a movie right off the bat where I'm the star. I'm carrying the film. That was at Stone Cold.
Oh, yes.
I was blessed to have a lot of guys around me that were great actors. And it's not like a bug you catch. What I think it did more for me than anything was it filled a hole. It was a canyon, really, of despair, because it gave me something to do, and I didn't start to learn to love it until I didn't want to do it anymore, because I didn't feel like I was doing it for. It wasn't adding anything to my life, I guess you can say. And I think that's when I really came to the Jesus moment of, you know, I've really got to do something different. And I need some help, and I don't know what that help is, but I need it to come in some way, shape, or form. And it actually came in the form of a film, and it came in, you know, in a script that I told my agent at the time. I said, I'm not interested. I'm done. I'm finished. I'm going on, you know, to different stuff. And he goes, no, you got to read the script. They love you. They want you. You don't even have to audition for it. And I said, nah, I'm not interested. And I ended up reading the script because I knew that if I didn't get off the phone with him and tell him I'd read it, you know, he'd badger me for weeks. And then I got it, before I got off the phone with him, he said, I got to warn you, it's a Christian movie. And I go, oh, great. That's not what I ever wanted to, you know, read for. But when I read it, it rocked my world because it showed me exactly who I was as a human being, what I had become, what I had allowed myself to become, and I didn't like it, and I wanted it to change. So I did the film, and it really changed my perspective on what his plan for me really is, because I think I was working so hard on making my plan work for me that I was missing all of the great blessings that he had really planned for me, and I was just ignoring them. And you can't do that. If you ignore what his purpose is for you, even though that purpose may not be what you want to do at that time, there's great blessings in it, but you have to be willing to open up your mind, heart, and soul and let him guide you. And you got to go along for the ride. So that changed my life. And since then, you know, things have been great. It doesn't mean that I'll continue to do the things that I'm doing, because you know, Hollywood is one of those businesses you have no control over. But I have been blessed. You know, the Dr. Pepper Fansville stuff has been amazing. We've had a great time doing it. We're doing another season this year. And, you know, I'm taking it as it comes, but I have been fortunate enough to be in The Longest Yard. That was my favorite movie when I grew up, the original, you know, and then to have the opportunity to have that moment with Burt Reynolds on the goal line, you know, and that's another great story where he, you know, we shot that, you know, in the morning. He wasn't even on set. We shot it with a stunt double. And he comes out after lunchtime and he's all fired up. Hey, boss, man, we're doing it. I said, no, we're not. We've already done it. He goes, what do you mean? I said, we shot that this morning. And he goes, I'm The Longest Yard. I'm the original. They're not making this movie without me. And I said, well, you can go talk to Peter. Peter Siegel was the director, and Adam Sandler was over there standing with him. And Bert's just throwing a piss fit. And he goes, we're doing this. You bring everybody back, and we're doing the on the goal line play with Boz. And Adam's behind the director and behind Bert, and he's like shaking his head, going, no, man, cut it off. And I said, how do you say no to Burt Reynolds? But you can't say no to Burt Reynolds. I'll never work.
Over here just antagonizing.
I'll never work again. But we ended up doing it, you know, and he had a blast getting hit. He even got mad at me because I didn't hit him hard enough. So it was an amazing experience. And I think I take that same attitude that because I was an athlete into all of my projects, because I really kind of look at it as a family. When you go on a movie set, you got to have a family atmosphere and an attitude, because you got to work with everybody. Everybody's got to be, you know, feeling good about what they're doing, their job. You got to give them encouragement. You got to give them criticism. You got to work with them. You got to be present for them. You got to be appreciative of them. And that's the same thing you got to do as a football player, as a football coach, as a trainer, all that stuff, all the small little pieces that go into making a championship football program. They're all important. And you know what? They're all at the University of Oklahoma, and they've been there for years. So I think that's the great thing. And I think that's why Coach Venables has had so much success in his recruiting. I mean, we talk a whole nother hour about his recruiting success going into the SEC versus the number of players he's lost, and he's replenished them with maybe even better players. So I think only time will tell, but I think everybody's super excited about the SEC this next year.
I am. I don't think there's a single person who's not. One thing we like to do on the family business is we like to give the opportunity for our guests to ask us a question. We always put them on the spot. We never give them heads up. So don't. We do it for everybody. Yeah. But any questions to us about us in general, our fathers, our upbringing, Oklahoma, what we're doing in the studio, what am I doing tomorrow? Like anything.
What am I doing after this?
Mr. Castiglione. All right. So let me ask you, how is it being the son of Joe, with him resurrecting Oklahoma, not only in football, but across the board in the success that we've had in so many multiple sports, basketball, gymnastics, baseball, softball, golf, all of it. Do you feel the pressure of living up to the legend of what he has accomplished, and then how do you feel like you're going to follow in so that you're not necessarily a shadow, but you want to maintain your own light, your own bright light? But do you feel sometimes that his success overshadows anything you could possibly do, or do you have a path for yourself to success?
It's a really good question. And something, I've asked myself, throughout my life. I kind of talked about before, actually, about how for a long time I didn't want to go to Oklahoma because I didn't want to be, just Joe's son. But something that I've kind of adopted, with speaking with my mentors and stuff is like, I always say, like, I'm my father's son, but I'm my own man. I'm my father's son, but my own man. And so, just trying to carve my path in a different direction. For the longest time, I did want to go into athletic administration, and I haven't closed that door yet, but that's just not something that I'm called to do right now. And so I don't really feel like anything's overshadowed per se, but I mean, I'm named after the guy, so I always laugh. They're like, if I ever go to get a to-go order and they expect to see my dad and they see me walk in, they're all disappointed. I'm like, I'm sorry about that. Or people are like, oh, like I was expecting another one. I'm like, yeah, but you got the younger, more outspoken one. But and so I don't feel like everything's overshadowed, just trying to carve out my path. It's kind of funny you talked about just like your calling and stuff. And so I'm just taking everything day by day, handling my business and going forward. But I mean, it's been a blessing. I've never looked at it as anything other than that. Extremely fortunate to be able to watch that growing up and see how he's built it step by step and having him as my father. And so it's a blessing. I've never, looked at it as a burden. Sometimes, I have people who have different expectations for me, or, sometimes I may just feel some internal pressure to do this or that. But it's a blessing, for sure.
I like the fact that you use the word path, that you're carving your own path. And I use an acronym for path: passion, attitude, trials, tribulations, truth, honesty. You can put all kinds of different words to the letters that suit your need. But the last one's humble, honor, home, humility, all that stuff. And I think that's really, if you stay along those lines, you'll find that specific path that he has in store for you. Now, Isaac, for you, obviously your dad, legend, but you've also got your uncle, Mike, they're all in coaching. Do you feel like, because that's one thing that I think I regret, when I got the call, hey, your career is over. That's it. I was so mad at football. It was like, the last thing I wanted to be is around football. And what I should have done is just turned around and thrown myself back into the game and give back all the passion that I had to the other players, all of that, so they could feel the same way that I feel. And maybe they play, and I get to be part of their path, but I didn't. And I've always regretted not going into coaching. Do you see yourself going along the lines into a coaching career?
So, excuse me. So I actually got into coaching. I was a sophomore in college, and one of my old coaches called me up and wanted me to coach varsity receivers at Moore High School. So I did that. Really enjoyed it, at the high school level, just like you said, pouring back into those guys, giving them all the knowledge that I have and the passion that I have and just, the camaraderie. Anybody who has played football and been around a locker room, when you leave it, you miss it. It's like that's like my most favorite thing. I don't care all the plays that I've made or anything cool things I've done. It was always just the fun times in the locker room and being around, that culture. And then I student coached for, under Coach Grinch here under Lincoln, and then a little bit for BV for almost 2 years. And just kind of like what Joe said, I just didn't think it was my calling at the time. I haven't closed that door by any means. It's just, how it is. Growing up around it, you spend a lot of time away from your family, and now it's even more recruiting and even longer hours. And it's changed a lot. It's definitely a very attractive profession, obviously, because you get to do what you love.
Way different though. It
is a lot different though. Yeah. So, but I don't feel any pressure, in regards to my uncles or my dad. It's just really like, I take a lot of pride in my name being from that family, from my grandma Dee raised all of them, and she did a good job, and they've poured that into us. So just very thankful to, be a part of it. And, people have expectations, and, that's honestly a blessing. So really don't look at it any other way than that.
So one last thing for both of you guys. So what is your favorite thing to do as a pastime living in Oklahoma? Mine was fishing. I'd go to any pond, any place, cane pole, no pole, Zebco, didn't matter. I'm fishing off a pier, off the side of a dirt road. What does it? Doesn't matter. What do you guys like to do?
I like to golf. I'm not very good at it, but I don't know if that counts, but yeah.
It's kind of similar to yours, but I just like going to the lake. Oklahoma has a lot of lakes, and some are a little bit more prettier than others. But I go out to Lake Eufaula, which is about 2 hours east.
I was there this weekend. Yeah.
But just being there, and whether that be fishing or going out on the boat or going on a walk, just taking some time there. I mean, that's like about as much nature as I get in.
Have you been to Ten Killer yet?
Oh yeah, I've been to Ten Killer. It's beautiful.
Ten Killer is a nice lake. That's a beautiful lake.
That's a little bit north, and so when you get a little bit north, Ten Killer. Grand, those are a little nice. Yeah, those are a little nicer than Lake Eufaula, but Lake Eufaula is dirt bottom, and you see it.
Yeah.
We greatly appreciate having you on. It was awesome.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun, guys.
For sure.
Thank you. For everybody who's watching, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. That helps us help you. It helps the algorithm. And so we'll see you next week, and remember to keep it in the family.
Boomer.